Hello, and welcome to another episode of Architecture for Kids podcast. I'm your host, Antonio Capelao. I'm a trained architect, an architectural educator, and founding director of award-winning Architecture for Kids CIC. In this podcast, I'm going to talk to practitioners and creatives that share the same passion as I do, to inspire and to engage children and young people to shape their built environment and the creative industries. The podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the Built Environment Trust, the Thornton Education Trust, and the Welsh School of Architecture, Cardiff University. My guest today is Kevin Stedman. Kevin has had a career in education since 1979, ranging from primary school teacher in Berkshire to being the youngest head teacher to be appointed in West Sussex, to principal schools advisor in the London Borough of Southwark. For the past 20 years, Kevin has worked in international education, largely in the Emirate of Dubai, being founding principal of King's Schools Dubai and CEO of King's Education, one of the most successful school groups in the United Arab Emirates. At present, he is chair of governors across King's Education and advisor to the chairman and board. He is currently also deputy director of the task force who are redeveloping Rashid and Latifa, the royal schools in Dubai. Kevin is a grandfather, photographer, traveler, and has personal interest in architecture, interior design, the arts, and gardening. Kevin, thank you for coming to talk to me today, and I'm very much looking forward to our conversation.
It's my great pleasure to be with you again, Antonio.
What subjects did you most enjoy in school, and what subjects were you good at if they were different?
That's a difficult question because I kind of like the links between the subjects. So I'm a geographer and I studied geography, but I could see that there were links with almost every other subject, particularly economics and maths, but also links through to the arts and linking the natural world, particularly geology and so on, across other subjects. But if you really press me, I'm a geographer and I studied English.
And did that influence your career choices?
Kind of always fascinated by learning. I think from quite a young age, although I couldn't really identify with it then but by default, it led me to deciding to become a teacher and explore this more. And, I worked pretty hard within the limitations of the UK curriculum as it was then, and O-levels and A-levels. But even at that time, I found them very restrictive.
How did the idea of becoming a teacher came about?
I think what stuck with me, and it stuck with me all my life, I had a wonderful childhood in Devon. So I had a lot of freedom as a child. And I went to a primary school that I realized, a state primary school, that I realized for its time, back in the 60s, was very go ahead. And I didn't notice, apart from perhaps the kind of more formal mathematics lessons, I didn't notice the kind of barriers between subjects. There was a lot of very well organized, I realize now, project work, lots of field trips out into the local environment, which was very rich. And, there are certain key people there who I would say probably are my gurus from my childhood, who were hard-working teachers, but they worked in a particular way. And now in my doujins, I realize that the reason why that meant so much to me was that it was kind of delivered, if that's the right word, to us as children in a highly creative way, which certainly motivated me, and I know it motivated many of my friends. And from that humble village school, many of us went on to incredible careers. Some stayed in the UK, but I know some people went overseas like I did. So, it sounds a bit cliched, but the primary school, I think, was the catalyst for me to want to be able to do what they were doing, with the onset of very basic technology and so on, how you kind of bring that in and so on.
You are one of those that not just had a prominent career, but you also have an international career. One of the youngest head teachers to be appointed in West Sussex. So how much has things have changed since then until now?
Things have changed dramatically. When I first became a head teacher of a beautifully designed village school on Chichester Harbour, the village of Bosham, and the school was kind of semi-open plan. Sadly, it isn't anymore. Some while ago, it was changed back to classrooms, but a beautiful built environment and a lovely place to explore. And pre-national curriculum, I had, with my colleagues, the opportunity to base the curriculum on a hub of the arts. And the standards that we achieved got us into the TES, a double-page spread on the work that these children were doing down in West Sussex, the quality of their writing, their artwork. They designed and made their own books, and I mean properly bound books, and they designed each page, they presented well, they pursued avenues of research to the nth degree. And so there was some collective work and some individual work. But it was a time of great opportunity. And I felt that, certainly one of my own children went through that regime, and he's benefited from it immensely. But other schools didn't take the opportunity. And I think it sounds as though I'm blowing my own trumpet here. It wasn't just me. There was a whole group of us who were really, really focusing on being very creative with the curriculum because we had the freedom to do so. But sadly, elsewhere and in other schools, that they took a different direction, too much freedom, and hence the onset of a national curriculum to try and bring some cohesion to what was going on then at primary level. But I also was very fortunate to work in West Sussex, the then local authority, who was very encouraging of this way and this style of working. And that's where I met my next set of gurus, if you like, who, really pioneered and led the way in terms of local education advisors and inspectors who were very much promoting what we were doing in schools.
And how did the career in Dubai?
So that was much later. So I spent 9 years in my first headship in Bosham, and it was the kind of place that probably I could still be working in just about. The kind of place you could stay forever because it was idyllic. But based on the success of the school and so on, I was encouraged to move on and take on a more challenging, much bigger school elsewhere in West Sussex, a very, very large school, and one that had lost its way, and to try and, on a much grander scale, develop the creativity. And this is the point where I thought much more about the relationship between a building, the school, and its environment. It was quite close to the sea, but it was built between the wars, and it looked like a series of bunkers, a very uninspiring building with long corridors and so on. By the time I left it working with the governing body and a very, very inspirational chairman of governors who wanted to make changes, unfortunately most of the teachers didn't, and they'd been there a long time, but that's another story. We transformed this school into a really creative, inspirational learning environment by just not having long corridors, creating other spaces and breakout spaces, and then talking to the students about what they wanted in their school. And what most of them wanted was an interesting outside that matched what was happening on the inside. So we developed this fusion between the outside, immediately outside the classrooms, and this huge courtyard area that was just concrete with the building itself. And by the time I left, the central courtyard had chickens and goats. It had a wonderful duck pond. It was just a vibrant, safe little environment for the children to learn a bit of animal husbandry. They collect eggs every day, etc., etc. You can kind of imagine the scene. And then we also built a wonderful wildlife area with a pond, and it became a sanctuary for crested newts and was a registered haven for them. So from this kind of very bland, between the walls, bunker style building, we created a kind of fusion between the natural environment, as natural as we could make it, and the building itself. And after I left and moved on to become a school inspector, come advisor, the next head took it to the next level, and there was a building program which kind of kept the best of the old building, but very much enhanced the new. It was very open, an open plan design, and the parents and some of the teachers needed help accepting that. But we developed, I guess, between us a way of working which allowed children to be creative across the curriculum and focused on the skill sets that they needed rather than compartmentalized subjects. And the standards were still high and the school did very well. So that was the next stage of my career.
You talk a lot about creativity, and I think it seems quite important in a lot of the work that you've been doing. How do you define creativity, as well as how creative are we in education today in primary school, do you think?
So that's a big question, a leading question. I don't think we are anything like creative enough. I think that gone were the days from, my idyllic days at Bosom when the national curriculum came in, clicked in over a number of years. Creativity, the arts, was squeezed out of the curriculum. And yes, of course, young people, they need to learn to read and write and so on, but let's do it in the right context, not to compartmentalize it and make it so formal, which is what happened. There was no middle ground. And so what do I mean by creativity? I mean the freedom for young people to actually have a voice and be able to picture, whether it's through a form of art media or whether it's through their writing or whatever, the way they see the world. What we did with the national curriculum was to squeeze out any of their actual views on things, their kind of time for research, their time for finding out, was virtually squeezed right out of the curriculum. And I think we've created a world in education, not everywhere, but certainly broadly, where adults make the decisions that maybe children could be making, or certainly they could be consulted about. So we see, in the world I work in, I see school developments and school buildings where no one has consulted a child about what they would like to see in a school. I was speaking to my nearly 4-year-old granddaughter 2 days ago, and she's about to start school in September. And I said to her, if you could paint me a picture of the best school for you, what would it look like? And she said, well, and she started to paint her version. She said, it would be here. And she painted a forest, and you couldn't see the buildings. She said, the school's hidden. And we come out and we play in the trees. Well, that was quite poignant for me, a 3, nearly 4-year-old being able to actually say to me, well, that's what I want in a school. And she is going to a school that's in a country house and it has got forest. Maybe that influenced her a bit. But it really got me thinking that, if a 3-year-old can be so sophisticated, what about if we ask a 15-year-old? There's you. And what missed opportunities there are. So as adults, we make assumptions as to what we think young people want of their school. But, I feel that our views are often fogged by our years of experience working in different environments, where a child's view is often very pure, and it's from the heart and from the soul. They really think very clearly about what it is they would like. And I would love architecture for kids to be able to develop this notion of giving young people of whatever age a voice whenever there's a school project, whether it's a state school, a private school, or one aspect of education, even university campuses. I guess there are some universities in the world who are quite forward-thinking and would have student consultation, but I've not seen it much lower down. So let's be creative with the way that we help young people to be creative and support the design of the built environment. We're very, very good in schools at teaching them about the natural environment and the plight of the world environmentally and sustainability and all of those things. But how often do we look at the link between that and the built environment and what the future may hold in terms of building sustainability and what's required? So, there's some work to be done here.
Are we preparing them well enough for new ways of being in careers?
I think some schools go some way in the fact that they, and my work is substantially in Dubai at the moment, that they go some way in helping young people there recognize that they are living amongst some iconic architecture, some dreadful architecture, but also some beautiful, iconic architecture, and the newness of that. And, they have to learn in schools, part of the UAE curriculum, the very recent history of the development of the UAE and Abu Dhabi and Dubai and the pride that there is in what's been created. So schools there go some way. I'm sure there are schools here in the City of London and other places where there is some appreciation of the architecture that is around them. But that's not enough. We need to infuse the curriculum with young people's ideas, give them the opportunity to have a voice and opinion. It may not always be taken up, but at least they've been given the opportunity to share. For example, a new school. I'd love there to be, some law or bylaw that says whether school is being redeveloped or redesigned or rebuilt, or a brand new school on a greenfield site is being built, that the students who would potentially go there or who've already been there, if it's been revamped, have a voice and are allowed to have opinions about the kinds of things that they would like to see. But not just that, because some of that we'd have to wade through the things that are current and flashy and whatever. But there will be others who really get to the crux of the matter. But more so, the practicalities of a building. If you're 4 years old, how do you see a doorway? If you're 3 years old, how do you see a doorway? And with the first school I worked on, Kings Dubai and Jumeirah, we did talk to actually the grandchildren of the owner of the school. And one of them said, I can't see through that door. And I can't, if somebody had somebody to open the door for me, I can't reach the handle. Well, that's potentially dangerous. So we put portholes in the doors. It wasn't too late to change the design of the puppet. We asked them too late. And then another one said, well, I have to go upstairs, but I can't reach the handrail. So all the staircases in King's schools now have a very low handrail that a 3-year-old could use if they wanted to. And many aspects like that. And as we've built more schools, those things have been integrated, and students, to a degree, have been consulted, but still not enough.
You have quite a good handle of the curriculum here in the UK as well as in Dubai.
Yeah.
And, we could talk a little bit about the two. What's the similarities and the differences? What needs to change?
Well, there are a couple of things I'd like to say there. So in the UAE and in Dubai in particular, so each of the Emirates has its own regulating authority for schools. But in Dubai, there is so much to fit into the curriculum, more than there is here, because there's Arabic for non-Arabs, there's Arabic for Arabic speakers, there's Islamic studies, there is social studies. Social studies curriculum could be developed a bit more, again, to look at the built environment. It looks very much more at the natural environment and preserving the natural environment, and how, despite the changes to the coastline, Dubai very much cares about creating and recreating havens for wildlife in the sea, in the desert, and so on and so forth. So, that's it. And then there are all the other areas that are needed to be covered, especially in the primary school. However, schools achieve it, and there's a dynamic and very rigorous inspection regime. Schools are inspected every year by a team that's made up of local educationalists there, and from people, from inspectors from wherever the home country is for the home curriculum. So it's an adaptation of the national curriculum for England. And there are schools who are doing some amazing things. Again, environmentally, very green schools, and they're having a voice. What I would like to see is a balance between what those schools are doing and influencing, how pollution is treated, and all of those kind of sustainability things, to actually children exploring the influence of the built environment on the natural environment, and then how that could be changed to the betterment of both. And there are great opportunities here. So, that's one aspect. The other thing is that schools there have a greater opportunity to help young people to be creative with the way that they work and they study. So the arts still feature quite heavily in the most successful schools. There's a little bit more freedom than there is here in the UK. But having said that, I've seen some wonderful examples of schools, as I say, who particularly do well with helping young people to understand about the natural environment. What we need to do is create this balance between then getting them to look at the built environment and some kind of fusion between the two. But the biggest problem, of course, is the nature of the curriculum, whether it's the national curriculum for Wales, the national curriculum for Scotland, whether it's American curriculum, the French curriculum. All of them are out of date. And with the onset of AI, the metaverse, schools are going to be caught on the back foot. So with the work I'm doing with my colleagues in Dubai, we're looking at what our virtual school will be like and how that young people will be able to interact with the virtual world of their virtual school, the real world, and what opportunities that will give them. And how, not to be scared of AI, but how we use AI to enhance their creativity. And my old brain finds that quite hard to come to terms with, but it's an exciting world and not one to be frightened of, and one we need to be ready for. So my interest now is to try to encourage people to lobby to change the curriculum so that it's freer. And that's not to say that it becomes, some people immediately will say, oh, it will become lax. It'll become very much like it was in the 1960s. Well, I went to school in the 1960s and I've done okay, so it won't. It needs to be enhanced with technology. We need to use the AI to do the checks and make sure these students are working to the best of their ability. They're working just ahead of themselves, creative, they're achieving the results they need to achieve. And of course, we need to find ways that that information can be relayed immediately to their parents. Because parents, somehow, many parents have a very distorted view of what their children are doing in school. AI will give the opportunity for them to see at any moment or know at any moment what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they can support. And if we can create what I like to call the kind of wider family curriculum, because parents are some of our children's, and grandparents, I have to say, greatest teachers, then we must be heading in a very interesting direction. But getting back to this, the built environment, architecture, schools of art and architecture and design have so much to offer. How much do we tap them? How much do we welcome them in? How much do we try and get this fusion between, what's going on out there design-wise and what the reality is? And so some big questions, big arguments, but my wish before my dying day would be that the curriculum is transformed and opened up so it takes full advantage of this digital world that's moving at a pace, and that enhances the creativity of the young people we're responsible for, and that through that they can influence through their lives what their environment, natural and built, is like.
Was there a question I should have asked you that I haven't asked, and what is that question?
You could have asked me why in my late 60s I'm still working. I feel in a small way I can make a difference, but I feel that in the time that I've worked in education and been through all these phases in this country, and then the different kind of work overseas and consultative work and so on, that I still have some wisdom and I still have something to offer. And if it triggers debates, then, I'll keep it going for as long as I possibly can. This vision for education, which I share with many of the colleagues I'm working with at the moment, come to fruition. And I think it will through this new school that we're creating in Dubai, which is going to operate in many respects like a small university. But, looking at the talents of young people as soon as they come into the school, age 3, developing their interests, while still teaching them to read, write, speak, and dual language, and all of those things that go with it, but giving it a purpose and allowing them to be creative in their safe school environment. So that's going a little way to what I'd like to see happening everywhere. Thanks for asking.
Thank you very much to my guest today, to all the listeners, and please subscribe to Architecture for Kids podcast and leave your rating and a review. Recommend us to your friends and family, and to find out more about it, visit our websites, antoniocapelao-portfolio.co.uk, buildingcentre.co.uk, thorntoneducationtrust.org, cardiff.ac.uk, and follow us on Instagram, Arch for Kids CIC, Twitter, and Capelao, LinkedIn, and Capelao, CAPELAO. And please join me again next week for another episode of Architecture for Kids podcast, brought to you in collaboration with the Built Environment Trust, the Thornton Education Trust, and the Welsh School of Architecture, Cardiff University.